Updated December 4, 2017 002045 United States President Donald Trump has changed his story on why he fired Michael Flynn as his national security advisor, now suggesting he knew at the time that Mr. Flynn had lied to the FBI as well as Vice President Mike Pence about his contacts with Russians during the presidential transition. Key points: President's tweet contradicts previous statements. Obama Justice Department official says Mr. Trump admitted to obstruction of justice in tweet. Russia probe investigator fired, removed from case over anti-Trump messages. It is a backflip from his initial explanation that Mr. Flynn had to go because he had not been straight with Mr. Pence about those contacts. Mr. Flynn yesterday admitted in a Washington court that he lied to FBI investigators about his discussions last December with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. Lying to the FBI is a crime, and one that Mr. Flynn acknowledged in pleading guilty and agreeing to cooperate with the special counsel's Russia investigation. It is unclear now why Mr. Trump would cite lying to the FBI as a reason for firing Mr. Flynn. Doing so suggests the president knew at the time that Mr. Flynn had done something that is against the law, and therefore the investigation could not be as frivolous as he has been portraying. It is also unclear how he would know that, if information about Russian contacts had not reached him, as he has been implying in his own defense. A former Obama administration Justice Department official, Matthew Miller, said Mr. Trump's tweeted response may have admitted to obstruction of justice. Mr. Flynn left the White House in February, only acknowledging that he had given an incomplete account to Mr. Pence of his conversations with Mr. Kislyak. What has been shown is no collusion, Mr. Trump told reporters as he departed the White House for a trip to New York. There's been absolutely no collusion, so we're very happy. After Mr. Trump forced Mr. Flynn out, he asked FBI Director James Comey to end the Bureau's probe in the matter, according to Mr. Comey's account. Mr. Comey refused, and Mr. Trump fired him too. The president tweeted in March that Mike Flynn should ask for immunity, adding the Russia investigation was a witch hunt excuse for big election loss by media Dems, of historic proportion. But, as Mr. Trump said in a tweet on Sunday, he never asked Mr. Comey to stop investigating Mr. Flynn. "I never asked Comey to stop investigating Flynn," Mr. Trump tweeted. Just more fake news covering another Comey lie. The president reiterated his version of events after Mr. Comey testified before Congress in June that Mr. Trump had asked him in a one-on-one meeting if he could see to letting Flynn go. Mr. Trump has been repeatedly dismissive of Mr. Comey and of special counsel Robert Mueller's continuing investigation, and was often generous in his appraisal of Mr. Flynn, except to say his advisor could not stay on the job after misleading his vice president. At the time, Mr. Pence said Mr. Trump was justified in firing Mr. Flynn because Mr. Flynn had lied to him. Neither Mr. Trump nor Mr. Pence indicated concern then that the FBI had not been told the true story. Mr. Pence, who served as head of Mr. Trump's transition, has not publicly commented on Mr. Flynn's plea. White House officials did not respond to questions about Mr. Trump's altered explanation as to why he fired Mr. Flynn. In what appeared to be moves undermining the policies of outgoing President Barack Obama, Mr. Flynn and Mr. Kislyak discussed U.S. sanctions on Russia, and Mr. Flynn asked Mr. Kislyak to help delay a United Nations vote seen as damaging to Israel, according to prosecutors. Mr. Flynn was also told by a very senior member of Mr. Trump's transition team to contact Russia and other foreign governments to try to influence them ahead of the vote, the prosecutors said. Sources told Reuters the very senior transition official was Jared Kushner, Mr. Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor. Mr. Kushner's lawyer did not respond to multiple requests for comment. Russia probe investigator fired over anti-Trump messages. Meanwhile, Mr. Mueller's team has removed a veteran FBI counterintelligence agent after the discovery of an exchange of anti-Trump text messages, a person familiar with the matter has said. The removal of the agent, who also had worked on the investigation of Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server, occurred around the middle of the year. Peter Carr, a spokesman for Mr. Mueller, said the special counsel removed agent Peter Strzok from the team immediately upon learning of the allegations. The decision was likely in keeping with the Justice Department's desire to insulate the investigators from claims of political bias or favoritism. Mr. Trump and many of his supporters have sought to discredit the investigation, in part by claiming a close relationship between Mr. Mueller and Mr. Comey and by pointing to political contributions to Democratic candidates made by some lawyers on the team. The nature of the messages Mr. Strzok exchanged and with whom he communicated was not immediately clear. The Justice Department's Inspector General is investigating the matter. Mr. Strzok was present during Mrs. Clinton's July 2015 interview with the FBI about her use of a private email server while she was Secretary of State, according to an unclassified summary of the interview commonly referred to as an FBI 302 form. Several other FBI agents and officials from the Justice Department also attended. ABC Wire's topics: Donald Trump, world politics, government and politics, United States. First posted December 3, 2017, 065411.